So here we are in beautiful Florence, and I'm working alongside painter Brianbutters. He is a landscape artist, that's his forte, and I will put a link below so you can check out his website. I highly recommend checking out Brian's work. So,
hey everybody, this is Brant, and he's an artist.
We made it into Florence, Italy, and we spent the morning walking around and looking at all the buildings and everything. And we were kind of looking for a decent place to go painting, and we came across Ponte Vecchio, which is the famous bridge in Florence. Which there's a whole bunch of shops all on top of this bridge, but I decided not to paint that. Some people opted to. I went for this nice scene here. It was an alleyway. Ponte Vecchio is behind me, and the opposite direction was this alleyway, and I really liked the contrasting light that I was seeing within this alleyway. So that was what I decided to paint. And as you can see how the sunlight is hitting all on the right hand side. It was like in streaks on the right hand side, and we had a lot of shadow areas. There wasn't a lot of sky in there, but there's some, and it just was a pleasing, aesthetically looking composition. So that's what I went with, and so that's what I'm doing here. And the way I started it was pretty much the way I started all of them at this point. Was I took the that's Brian there from, you saw him in the beginning of the video. He did my helped me with my intro. He's set up right next to me, and so he painted the same scene that I was painting. He liked the way it looked as well, so we both together painted that same thing. If you check out, I'm not sure if he'll have this posted on his website or not, or I'm not sure if he'll have any of these paintings that we did posted on his website, but if he does, make sure you check that out and kind of look and see how he did it. It's amazing how when two artists are painting the same scenery, how different they can really look. It amazes me every time. So anyway, the way I started this, like I said, was pretty much the same way I started all of them. I framed in my composition using my cell phone, and so basically I took the picture and then I played around with the cropping on the photo until I found what worked compositionally, how much buildings, how much I wanted to have on the left, how much I wanted to have on the right, how much sky I wanted to have showing, whether I wanted it zoomed in or zoomed out. That's kind of how I utilize my phone when I'm framing it, and then I look at that, and then I use that as well as looking what's in front of me and from life, and I pretty much draw in my composition onto my canvas. And that is kind of how I do it. That's how I was doing it pretty much every painting for the week that we were in Italy. And I didn't change that up at all. It seemed to work pretty good, so I stuck with that. I'd be interested to know for any plein air painters out there, is there a different way that you figure out framing your composition for your painting before you start? There is. I've done a video in the past, a plein air painting where I did one on my porch, and I have a small device which actually you can set to the size of the canvas that you're going to paint on, and then you can frame in your composition that way. I have used that. There are other ways. People use their hands. They'll set their hands up like this and frame in the composition that way. I've seen people do that. So, but I utilize the phone. It works out pretty good. I only use it for the main drawing, and then I put it away, and then I just work from life. And it works out pretty good. I like it the way it goes, and this painting was no exception. Went pretty much as well as the other paintings. And as the week progressed and we were doing our plein air paintings, I did notice I was getting better at setting up my composition and painting the values, temperatures, the colors. Everything was improving each day as we painted more and more, which I expected to happen. That was definitely something I was hoping for, and I highly recommend that anybody that does do any kind of painting, whether it's in the studio, whether it's plein air, it doesn't matter. The more you do it, the better you're going to get at it, and that's just the way it is. And this was no different. So the colors I was using here, as you can see, as with pretty much all the buildings in Italy, they all have this yellowish ochre color to them, and they do vary between the light and the shadows as far as how the color changes. It changes in value. Some of the buildings are a slightly different color, but they're all in that yellow-red area. So that seemed to be the prominent color that I was painting for most of the buildings while we were in Italy. And as you can see in the alleyway here, it was pretty much the same thing. I had a lot of doors and windows that I was going to paint in, and we were only here for an hour and a half. We were in this area here, plein air painting, and it was the only painting that I did during the daytime this day. So it was one of the days where I did not as many paintings as I had in the previous days. The other days were 3 to 4 paintings up until this point. Like I said, we spent most of the morning walking around. Let's see, I would say we set up here, this is probably around 11 o'clock. I'm saying that we set up here, and then we left, we packed up, we left this area, and then we put all of our belongings, our paint supplies and everything, we put them in the rental car, and then we went to the art museum. And that's where in Florence they have a beautiful art museum, and we saw some Da Vinci's and some Michelangelo's, Rembrandt, just some awesome paintings that we saw there. I highly recommend, if you are in Florence, you must check out the museum and see these paintings for yourself in person, especially the Rembrandt. It was just, there was a couple of them there, and well worth the visit, well worth it. So again, here I am using a mixture of the yellow ochre and asphaltum. And asphaltum is a color that I do like to use. It's one of my earth tone colors, and it's in the brown, the realm of the brown area. It almost looks like a burnt umber, and it's very similar to a burnt umber, but it doesn't, it just has a different, the way it mixes with the other colors is different than what a burnt umber does. I really like the way it mixes with the other colors. I can get some very good value changes with it, so I do like using the asphaltum. And this was a tough part of the painting here, so that's why you can see I brought my phone out again, take another look at it, because this street angled upward and to the right, and I wanted to make sure that in my painting you can tell that it angled upward and to the right. So this is was a little bit tricky in the perspective, and I wanted to make sure I got it right, and I still I look at the painting now, and I still am not 100% sure that I accomplished that properly. But in the studio, when I do some more work on it in the studio, I will make sure that that perspective is correct. And if I have to paint over that to do that, then that's what I'll do. And here I am putting in the streaks of light that were on the right-hand side, and so that's kind of what I'm putting in now. And you try to figure out how best to do that. As you can see, I painted the buildings in first, and then I went over it with my lighter color. Maybe it may have been better to have left those areas blank, not to have painted those areas that where the light streaked on those buildings, and then painted in a lighter color on the blank canvas. It was not what I opted to do here at this moment, and I think it worked out okay. I mean, you can make it work either way. It's just, I guess it's a preference as to which one gives you the best effect that you're looking for. And we're always trying to get the best light effect on anything that we're painting, especially here. And that's, like I said, that's what drew me to this alleyway, was the effect of the light and the contradicting shadows. And it was a very nice effect, and I wanted to try to duplicate that. And I believe in the short period of time that we were working on this, that I did accomplish that. And I was quite happy with it, with the way it looked. And there was a lot of windows, a lot of doors, and then that's where you have to make the decision as to how much information do you want to put into your painting, especially when you're working on a short time frame, like when you're doing plein air. You're not going to be out there for more than an hour or two. So as to how much information you want to paint in, you got to kind of pick and choose. And like you can see a lot of doors here, a lot of windows. So which ones do you put in, which ones do you leave out? Those you just pretty much, I just kind of played around with that as I went. And what's there is was the decision that I made as to which doors and windows I wanted. Obviously, the ones that are parts of the building are up close. You're definitely going to see more doors and windows there than the ones that are farther away. But I tried to put in what I could, and where I had some difficulty, and you'll see that at the end here, was there was some cars parked along the street there in the alleyway, and I had a difficult time with the perspective of those vehicles. I painted them in way smaller than they actually are in life, and it kind of looks a little funky. But I'm not worried about those. I'm going to paint over those, and I'll put the right perspective in there so that the vehicles match the perspective on the street, size-wise. So I'm not too concerned about that. But my initial eyeballing that perspective of those vehicles, my initial assessment was not correct. It was not very good. So you can see here I'm putting in the windows, and then again there's more perspective you have to deal with here. As the windows get closer, they get longer, they get the angle changes. So those are all things that you have to keep in mind. And again, they will be things that I can fix, not fix, but correct in the studio if they need to be. Some things that I painted, I'm sure will be just fine the way they were. And that's again where you make the decision. What do you want to keep? What do you not want to keep? So you're not fixed into what you painted whenever you do plein air painting, especially in oil. Oils is very forgiving. You can definitely change it as you go. You can definitely change it later. You can paint over many things and change the perspective. You can change the colors. You can change the values, and these are things that's why I work in this medium, oil, because you can because those changes that you can make. You're not stuck with what you painted. I imagine it's the same with any painting. Acrylic, I would think it would be the same way. Watercolor, that's going to be different. Watercolor, you're going to be what you put on the paper. You can go darker, but you can't go lighter unless, of course, you go over it with a white gouache, which I suppose you could do, or maybe a gouache. I'm sure yellow gouache. You could change things up. I don't know about the other colors though, as far as like reds and blues and greens. As far as the gouache goes, if you can go over them with lighter color and change those or not. But then you get, of course, then you take the chance. If you're doing watercolors and you like that transparent look of how the paint looks on the paper, you're going to lose that with gouache because it's very opaque. But anyway, that's not the concern here with when I'm using oils. I do not use any medium. I did not use any medium as far as oil. Like I didn't use any linseed oil or walnut oil or anything like that to mix in with my colors to make them looser or so they last longer. I didn't use any medium at all. That is, using a medium is not necessary. I use my paint straight out of the tube. It's something that I do in the studio as well. So that's not I don't concern myself with that too much. There's nothing wrong with using a medium when you're painting. A lot of people do. It helps them move the paint around a lot better. I generally don't worry too much about that. So that's pretty much what I was dealing with here. My sky is you can see I used the ultramarine blue near the top of the canvas, and as I worked down closer to the buildings, I moved it blended into a cerulean blue. So got a warmer blue at the top, cooler blue near the buildings, and so that was that's what I keep in mind when I'm working with my colors, the temperatures that I'm using. And here's the vehicles that I'm putting in on the street, and they were way too small, not correct, and that's definitely something I will be working on and fixing. So you can see those here. So I'm getting close to the end of the painting, or at least not the end of the painting, but the end of the time session that we were there painting, because then we packed up and moved on and went to the museum and spent the rest of the day in Florence. And then later that night we did a nocturnal, and I did not record any of the nocturnals, but you will see those when I do my From Plein Air to Studio series. Those paintings will be in there and you'll get a chance to see those. So yeah, I enjoyed painting this. I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Definitely give a like in the comments, and make sure you subscribe if you're not subscribed. And I'll see you next time.